Welcome to the Zen Mind Show with Michelle and Dr. Pat. Rapid Zen transformation. Are you looking for healing processes that require no financial investment? Then this show is your beacon of hope. Hi, I'm Michelle Carbone, a rapid transformational therapist with over 700 hours of training in hypnotherapy, coaching, trauma, and intuition. Together with Dr. Pat, we will be providing the resources and guidance you need to take meaningful steps towards your personal healing and growth. From mindfulness techniques to actionable wisdom, each episode will offer invaluable insights. Join us today as we explore the tools and practices that anyone can do and have access to. Join the Zen revolution. Transform your life today. We are a community dedicated to supporting each other as we strive for a balanced and Zen-filled life. Stay tuned with me and Dr. Pat. The Zen Mind Show starts now.
Welcome, everyone. We want to invite you to a very special episode today. It's one that Michelle and I were just chatting about before the show. And, what we're talking about is harness your subconscious. What does it look like when you're mastering and understanding your inner mind? This is so important to not just understand, but understand how it works and what to do about it. Right, Michelle?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we are not going to be living in a world of, unless, of course, we have a complete global blackout and there is no electronics, but we are not going to be living in a world where we're going to get less information.
Right. Yeah, right. We're always getting more and more and more.
And believe it or not, that information sometimes wires both our conscious and subconscious parts of us.
Yes, especially our subconscious.
Yeah, boy.
Because that's the biggest part, right? That's 90%.
It's the part under, it's like, what do you call it? The iceberg, and the top is the conscious, and then all of that big iceberg stuff, that's the other stuff that's going on. But how do we harness this? This is the key, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I think understanding some of the things your subconscious does. So I was trained with Marisa Peer, who founded RTT, and and she has rules of the mind. And yeah, obviously, I want to give her credit. So these are Marisa Peer's rules of the mind. The most impactful one for me, and it's always the one I start with, and we've talked about this before on the show, but our minds love what's familiar and avoid what's unfamiliar. So your mind will choose a familiar hell over an unfamiliar heaven every time if you don't know that's what you're doing. And I think this is why so many of us end up in traumatic relationships and in jobs we hate and doing things that we just don't make us happy. And it's because it's that mammalian brain, it's that lizard brain telling you, oh, this didn't kill you, stick with that. And that doesn't work.
Yeah. And you know how quick we are to believe that?
It's easy to believe it.
It's so easy to believe.
We're hardwired.
We are. How do we get that way? Let's talk about that for a minute. Because if we know that, then it's almost as if a little, like a little warning beep can go up and we can catch it. But 9 out of 10 of us do not know what to do.
Well, we're not taught that, right?
No.
And that's where mindfulness, we always talk about that, but I mean, it really comes down to noticing what's going on, being willing to see and willing to question, where did this belief come from? Where did this behavior come from? When did I also feel like this? So in my marriage, I've talked about this. I basically married my sister. I grew up walking on eggshells, and then I married somebody who made me walk on eggshells. And it was a familiar feeling. And when I watched a training video that was a hypnosis session on this role, basically, it was just it hit me like a truck. And I'm like, oh my God, I married my sister. Holy crap. And so I think the key is noticing that's what's happening and questioning what you're doing. So why am I doing what I'm doing? Am I doing this because it feels safe? Am I doing this because it's familiar, so it feels safe? And it comes down to, when we were cavemen, we had to survive from, all kinds of crazy animals and all that stuff. So it was like we knew places that were safe, or we knew plants that were safe to eat. And our mammalian brain had to remember that. And it's still here in full force. Oh, you muted yourself.
It's still here in full force, but I want to ask you this question, because this is really what we're talking about here today. When we say it's still here in full force, it's running the show.
Yeah, your subconscious.
See, we're not just saying, but we're saying, why am I doing that? Why did I just do that?
Yeah.
How did I get here? How did I get here? Right?
Yeah. How did I get here? And looking, and that's where, and then shadow work comes into this too, right? Like, so it's all comes back to ego, shadow work, mindfulness. But, if you just think about what's familiar, what's the same, what have I experienced before? Like when that light bulb hit me about my marriage, it was like, oh my gosh, what did I do to myself? And now I need to work on it. And then, the other rules come into play too, right? Like we could probably do a whole episode on just this one, but like that, like the rule of what we focus on, we move towards. So it's like when something's familiar, we're kind of focused on it, right? And so that kind of comes into play too. So we need to focus on what we want, not what we don't want. And I explain this to clients all the time because they're like, oh, I don't want to do this, or I don't want to do that. And I'm like, okay, but what do you want? What do you want to do? How do you want to be? We need to focus on that. We need to get your thoughts around that because, again, it comes to familiar thoughts, right? Like, this thought feels good, so I have a neural pathway that's telling me, oh, I'm safe in this place where maybe I'm not. Or it's okay that I get beat because my mom always got beat up and she was fine, or whatever. We keep ourselves stuck with our thoughts, and because we focus on what we don't want, but that's telling our mind what we want because what we focus on is what we get. Yeah. So it's like this circle.
Yeah. And, I was talking about this earlier today and this morning because we do this dance between emotion, logic. I asked my professor once, okay, this is me. I don't come from a highly educated family. So you have to understand some of these questions that I would ask. I said, what the heck's a practicum?
Yeah. What is it? I don't know either.
It says here, I got to do a practicum. And so this is me, right? This is this emotion, logic, what wins, what doesn't, what what you believe, yes, no. But all of this is about unconscious. So this is me because I got scared. Practicum, that sounds like. So he says,
right, it's a scary word. It's not familiar.
So you have to take, you have to take all this and you have to go get someplace that you can work so you could practice what you just told us, I says, I have 25 years in corporate America. I mean, can't that be my practicum? I mean, so I'm asking these questions, right, that come from a place of the way that I'm wired about something that's very scary to me. You see, going back to school, somebody that's learning different, this was not like, yo, bring on my education. But you see, what's my mind doing? My mind, in your words, my subconscious mind is trying to get out of doing something that's a requirement to get a degree.
Yeah. Well, and what it's doing is going, that's scary. I don't know what it is. It's not familiar. I need to avoid that.
Get me away from the pain of whatever it is I don't know. Long run, I did it. Wasn't painful because I found out I could do it on anything I wanted. I mean, I could have gone and done Mickey. I could have been Mickey Mouse at Disney, and nice. And that would have been my practicum. But let's talk about this for a minute. The pain, this idea of pain, and no pain, no gain. I don't know. Does my subconscious know that?
Maybe, if you were taught it when you were little. And really, is that the way it should be? Do we need to have pain to have gain? I mean, in a way, sure, we need to be uncomfortable, right? But we don't necessarily need pain to have gain. We can choose to think of it as growth and not see it as pain. Yeah. And then how does your experience of life change if you don't see everything as pain?
Exactly. And if you see them as lessons, if you see them, and somebody said something to me a long time ago. I can't remember who said it, but they said something like, you know, pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. And, I just blew that off because I said, like, I don't even know what you're talking about. And I just go on with my life. But let's talk about this. I had an interesting conversation with my team earlier today. And I said, look, people make decisions based on various cues, right? But let's talk a minute about how within ourselves, if we could, even our subconscious can rule what goes on in here from what we see visually, pictures, what we hear, right?
Oh, yeah.
Even though we may be responding at a conscious level, something then goes in. And how does that drive the choices we make?
Yeah, well, and I think it's affecting your nervous system, right? Like, so because we go into fight or flight or fawn or whatever and freeze, but it's like we can work with it. We just have to know what's happening. We have to be able to notice what's happening, and that's where the mindfulness comes in. Is like being able to notice, oh, okay, I'm feeling this. And usually you'll feel it in your body, but some people are very disconnected from their bodies and they don't realize they're feeling something in their bodies and that they're being pushed in a certain direction. But it's like, yeah, where is the subconscious driving us? And it's driving 90% of our life, but we don't notice that's what's going on until we start doing this work of looking at it and seeing, okay, there it is. That's the ego. That's because, the ego would come into play too, right?
Please.
And we are emotional beings and we can't logic ourselves out of the emotions we're feeling. I wish we could, because then that would just be so much easier. We'd just be Vulcans over here, but we're not Vulcan. We're human. So we have to deal with our feelings. We can't shut them off, right? And so we have to realize, okay, why? Oh, like I was talking to a client yesterday, and she has a boss that triggers her because he's like her ex-husband. And so I'm like, okay, well, this is where, like, so when he's triggering you, what is it? What are you feeling? What's happening? Because that's telling you what needs to be healed. That's giving you a clue, because it's this emotion. It's not logical. Emotion's not logical. I wish it was. It'd be so much easier. Let's just be Vulcans.
Let's be Spock, because then we get best of both worlds. Let's take a really short break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the Spock in each and every one of us, right? Okay, like Spock's Star Trek. That's what our reference is. But there's something, when you think about the creators of that, it's fascinating that they took, a Vulcan person and gave that person the best or the worst of both worlds. And I think we have that. We have both of that. When we come back, we're going to see how thoughts rule our lives, but not the way you think. What if there's a thought that's operating, but it's just not like there. It's not like, I do not like spinach. It's not that thought. But what if underneath it, there was something going on that anytime anything green showed up on your plate, you were like, where's the popcorn? Let's take a short break. We'll be right back. Hey, everybody, welcome back. It's Zen Mind Show. I'm Dr. Pat. I get to take this journey with the most incredible Michelle Carbone. Listen, before we go on, you're not just talking about things. You work with people every day. You work with them. You use any number of different approaches to do that. Rapid Zen transformation, that's what we're talking about here. But it's more than that. You use tools that you have learned along the way to get underneath there and get into the bottom of the iceberg level, that part that sunk the Titanic, because it has the same ability to do that to our dreams, to our relationships, to our jobs, to our ability to create. So how do people find out more about you, and how do they work with you? Because you work remotely as well.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So my website is zenmindmichelle.com. And my email is zenmymichelle@gmail. And my Instagram and Facebook are zenmymichelle. So if you can remember zenmymichelle, you got me. Very easy.
Yeah, and Michelle is with two L's.
Yes.
All right, I want to get back to Spock. We left off on Spock.
Yeah.
And what I said to you was it was brilliant. And what are they, the Roddenberry people? It was brilliant in the way they could have made everybody Vulcan, but they didn't. Spock had a unique quality. He had a mom, right? That
Yep.
was human. And so there was a reason for that. Because if you didn't have that multidimensional nature that showed so much of what we're talking about, but isn't Spock a clearer indication of a very repressed subconscious aspect of who he was?
Oh, yeah. Like the training he did to, hold his emotions back. And then when he became full, like in one of the episodes of Strange New Worlds, I think, like he became fully human and he didn't know how to handle these emotions that were coming up because they were so strong and they took over and he couldn't use logic and he couldn't logic. He just had to learn how to get through it. And as humans, we're not really taught how to deal with our emotions or how to feel them. And it's easier to disconnect, whether we just disassociate or use drugs or whatever. It's like we can just shut ourselves off and not feel them. And we're not taught that. So it's like we're all these babies running around, not feeling our feelings or learning how to feel them. And we're having temper tantrums.
And every culture is different. In the United States, we're considered individualistic. There are other cultures, especially, when I look at my background, I have cultures in the Mediterranean and also in South America. They're viewed as more emotional, so forth and so on. But we make these judgments as if we don't have all of the elements within us individually. And all of the elements that we have can lead us down a pathway to where we want to go, or lead us down a pathway to a place we don't want to go. And the subconscious is a big driver in that, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Well, and it's because we get these beliefs or thoughts that are on repeat. Like I've worked with someone that we were doing an abundance session for hypnotherapy. And so we get to the beliefs and it's like, it comes down to her mom lived a certain way and they didn't have a lot of money. And then her dad lived a different way. He had more money, but he never helped out the mom. And then there's these like worthiness things. There's these, I don't deserve to have money, or money's hard to get and I have to practically kill myself and work 5 jobs in order to have money, when none of that's actually true. But you carry these beliefs with you, and those beliefs are driving what you're doing and choices you're making. So maybe you don't go after that job that you really want that pays well because you don't think you deserve it.
That's the story of my life. I mean, people see me now and they have a perspective on who I am, Dr. Pat, the whole thing, right? But if they really knew what goes on inside of me, the imposter syndrome that happened to me early on, graduating, nightmares for 3 years about having my degree snatched from me on stage. I mean, but I know where I got that from, though. I grew up in a family. I'm learning different. I stuttered. I was never good enough, blah, 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 all that. But that stays with you until it doesn't. And this is why you're doing this, because we don't have to stay shackled.
Exactly. We can choose to let them go. We just aren't taught that. We aren't taught that we can do that.
That's right.
Even, right? So,
That's right.
and and if we don't know that belief exists, we don't know what we're getting rid of or what we need to get rid of.
I got to tell you, I know we didn't plan this. I got to tell you a little short story. I had a friend of mine who I made a comment. I'm a movie buff. I think you are too.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm a movie buff. I grew up with all the Mad Maxes, all of them. And so my friend says, you didn't go see the latest Furiosa movie. I said, no, I didn't. She said, I can't believe you didn't go. And I said, I didn't go. And so there are 3 things she knows about me. And here it is. This is my subconscious. I now know this. There's also another television show I used to watch all the time. I love Marisa Peer, but I stopped watching Law and Order SVU. And she knows that. And there are 2 things I've talked to her about these 2 things. And she identified a pattern. Tell me if this is not my subconscious. I can't even believe I'm being this vulnerable and sharing this.
I love it. Thank you.
One, I got furious at what's his face, Dick Wolf, when he got rid of Kelly Rowlands. When he did not, and I feel the same way of NCIS, but I was like, you get rid of Rowland's character, nobody's going to watch it. And okay, what's happening? The ratings. But she said the same thing. She said, Pat, you got furious at George Miller for not casting Charlize Theron in a role she owned. And he said she was too old to CGI her.
Wow.
So she said, you got some kind of thing going on, and just about the movies, but she's right. It's about things in general. When people aren't either treated fairly or something like that. And in both of those cases, it's true. I never understood how they could just X out the actor, but the character who made that humane because of a dollar amount, and Charlize Theron because she's too old. So clearly now, as of a couple of days ago, I am aware and don't fully understand how my subconscious feels about those things. Sorry.
Yeah, there's something about like rejection or, right, or like
it's just not fair.
Or, an unfairness. And like, okay, well, F you, because you're not fair.
And my friend said, dude, it's Hollywood.
And somehow you were taking it personal.
And why? And when you start to look at that, I come from a generation and an era where we had to fight for rights that people have now that they don't realize that they may lose very quickly. But we fought on a regular basis for those. So clearly there's something. Of course, I have a network that's all about a voice, uncensored, open, positive. But this was so interesting to understand that about myself. I mean, I haven't fully processed it because she was very short and to the point. But this is just one idea of how the subconscious would direct me to not go see a movie. I've seen every one of them.
Yeah.
Every one of them. So here's what I said to her, and I want you to run with this to bring this home. I said, you know what replacing Charlize was like? It was like you think you could replace Tina Turner in Mad Max and Thunderdome. And she said, oh, you better go see and get some help on this. But let's bring this home now, because what we're talking about is the depth. But now this is harmless. Whether I go to the movie, nobody cares.
Sure.
But we do things based on our subconscious that aren't so harmless.
Yes. One, our mind does what it thinks we want it to do, and it knows what it thinks it knows that by our thoughts. So it's like it sees our thoughts and goes, oh, okay, that's what you want. So if you're having these thoughts of I suck, I'm not good enough, I struggle with this. I'm not good enough for this or that or the and these thoughts are swirling around. Your mind's like, oh, okay, you don't want to be good enough. Let me show you why you're not good enough. Let me give you evidence of that. And it sucks when it does that, because then you're in this spiral of like suckiness, and you have to realize, okay, that's what's happening. What are my thoughts doing? What am I telling myself? And then go, okay, I need to change that. I need to change the momentum and get that in an upswing and realize, okay, I don't need outside validation. I am good enough. The fact that I exist on this planet means I'm good enough. And so I'm telling everyone here, the fact that you exist means you're good enough. You're getting this message because you need it. And like, we can own that we're good enough, but it's just, we have to realize we're having those thoughts and then change them and redirect them and go, no, that's not true. That's just my ego telling me stuff. And that's cool. That's what the ego is going to do. Love you, ego. We're going to be friends. Here's the real deal. I am good enough. And then watch, when you are good enough, what do? You apply for the job that you want. You go after the partner that you want. You can go shopping, whatever it is that's challenging for you, right? So, yeah, it changes everything.
And it changes everything. And I think your message for today really is that our thoughts, all of us have these thoughts, but our thoughts, I think as you say it, Michelle, what you say is our thoughts can, they can cure, they can prevent, they can cause. and they can cure all our ailments. They can bring to us that which we want more from a joyful end of the stick, right? If you looked at Hawkins's scale, or they could bring for us more pain and agony than we could ever imagine.
Yeah. And it's our choice because that's the only thing we can control is our
Yeah.
thoughts.
Yeah. Now, don't email me. I love the actor Anya Taylor-Joy. Believe me, I do. But I will say we don't need another Mad Max prequel. We need a sequel. We need to see how Furiosa, Charlize Theron now rule the world. Nobody's going to listen to me. Not too old for anything. Are you kidding?
She's gorgeous.
It's so funny, though, how we make those decisions.
Mm-hmm.
But if we don't know what you just shared today about how the subconscious can rule our world and us end up on our own Mad Max planet.
Yeah. And this society doesn't foster us having good thoughts about ourselves. So
yeah,
it's easy to have bad thoughts.
Yeah. Otherwise, there wouldn't be every single commercial that you have on television now telling you what you're not, what you don't have, what you should have. You're not sick, but then you wish you were sick, because if you were sick, you'd probably be able to buy this drug that you probably can't afford anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Michelle, thank you. Give out your website one more time.
ZenMindMichelle with 2 L's.com. So, and it's MICHELLE.
Please. I'm not saying I'm not going to go see Furiosa, but I am thinking about it. Rock on, Spock. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
We'll see you all next time.
Thank you for listening to the Zen Mind Show with Michelle and Dr. Pat. Tune in the first Tuesday of each month at 11:30 a.m. Pacific on Transformation Talk Radio for more free resources that anyone can do and have access to for your personal healing and growth journey. Imagine a space where you can not only listen, but actively participate. Soon we'll open our phone lines for call-ins, offering direct coaching to help you navigate challenges and accelerate your transformation. For more information, visit www.zenmindmichelle.com.